It flipped our world over one weekend, and basically we came into over 100 cancellation emails.
Hey guys, I've got Phil here from Milson Serviced Apartments. They're an independent company operating over 50 apartments down in Sydney CBD, just near the Harbour Bridge. They've had a bit of an issue, like most accommodation providers, with the COVID virus, and they're looking to pivot. They've come to us to help them fill that gap that's been left while people can't move around. So Phil, thanks for coming today to have a bit of a chat.
Thanks for having me.
So for anyone who hasn't heard of Milson Serviced Apartments before, can you tell us a little bit about what you guys do and a bit about the area that you're in?
Yeah. So look, Milson's Point, it's literally one stop north of the Harbour Bridge, close to CBD. We've got great village atmosphere, cafes, all that sort of thing around. Basically what we're doing is we manage about 50 privately owned apartments, all on the short-term market. Typically we house people for relocation accommodation, corporate travel. We've got a lot of international, interstate travellers, mainly for work. Some people just between houses, they might be renovating the house or they've sold a place and waiting to find the right new home, and we offer them a temporary solution for that.
So essentially what you guys are like is fully self-contained accommodation with a kitchen and everything like that, but you still have the service of linen, full furnishings, bit of Foxtel, that sort of thing, but not quite room service level like a Hilton hotel.
Yeah, absolutely. So all apartments are self-catering. They all have a kitchen. We don't have an on-site restaurant. What we're providing is residential apartments within a residential building, fully serviced. So it's all inclusive. So we have, you're not worrying about utilities, you're not worrying about furniture, you're not worrying about linen. You're basically ready to move in with a suitcase.
So the interesting thing is that you guys are pretty well positioned in terms of what you offer to cater for accommodation in a pandemic sort of scenario, or a lockdown sort of scenario, because people can stay inside in your accommodation, and there doesn't have to be a huge amount of interaction. There's no issues with daily visits, room service, that sort of thing. But obviously people are staying at home. So how has that affected your occupancy rate of your apartments?
Look, it flipped our world over one weekend, and basically we came into over 100 cancellation emails, accommodation March, April, May, people planning to travel for Easter, and March, typically a pretty good month. We're operating around the 70 to 80% occupancy rate, which we did until about mid-March. We closed off the month at about 50%, and if you look at the last 2 weeks, we're at approximately 33%.
Wow, that's a pretty significant drop.
Huge drop.
And obviously you guys would specialise, especially proximity to the city and the Harbour Bridge and all that. You would see a lot of corporate travel and that sort of thing, which has obviously been totally suspended almost universally now. Exactly.
So we still have some long stay guests with us that are effectively living in these apartments at the moment. That's the majority of the remaining occupancy. Anyone travelling for a short stay has basically been told they can't. Essential travel only. They've closed international borders, closed state borders. We don't have any of those normal travellers coming in. And even people that wanted to come physically can't. So now, as you said before, now we're looking at how we can pivot and find people. Obviously, the short stay market's gone, but I think there's plenty of people that need somewhere to live, self-contained accommodation, whether it be essential workers, whether it be people between living arrangements. They can come and live in these apartments independently.
So you guys are pretty well positioned as you got in touch around a longer term leasing and sort of like a traditional apartment lease that someone would take through a real estate agent, but it particularly suits people who don't have furnishings or perhaps already have somewhere that they call home, but for one reason or another they don't want to go there. We're thinking about people who are perhaps interstate workers who can't travel home or don't want to travel home. It's not feasible, particularly air travel right now, even domestically, isn't really a great idea. So they can sort of walk into a full furnished apartment and not have to really worry about anything but their luggage, and cook their own meals, stay safe when it's time to stay home, and but reap the benefits of not having to sign a 6-month lease with through a typical residential lease.
Absolutely. So the flexibility is key here, and that's what I've already seen this week. A couple of people I've helped out with a 3-month lease. It's an uncertain climate at the moment. They don't know where they're going to live. They don't know what's next. They're not committing to a 6 to 12-month lease right now. They want something even monthly we can work with. But I've had some people delve into a 3-month lease, obviously full opportunity to extend that. But they can effectively move straight in, nothing else required. They're not taking out utility accounts. They know what it's going to cost them. It's certain, and it's the security that they need in their living arrangement right now.
I think it's an interesting opportunity in order to sort of solve a unique challenge for both sides, because you have the potential tenants and you have you guys with the housing stock effectively, and you can meet somewhere in the middle. And so obviously a short-term solution would have a larger nightly rental cost and that sort of thing. What you're talking about is bringing these sort of within sort of market rates for longer tenancies, but you still have that flexibility in furnishing.
Absolutely. So the key to what we're doing at the moment is restricting the housekeeping side of things. So they're still fully furnished with linen towels, but you've got an internal laundry. You can wash your own linen. We're not changing them weekly and having housekeepers come through the apartment weekly. I think that's quite important in the current climate for people's comfort and health and safety. And really what we're doing is taking that into account by dropping rates to a more traditional rental market rate. And
I think it's an interesting aspect of this situation is that someone may need this for 3 to 6 months, but they don't know how long it's going to be. So hesitance is there for a 6-month lease or a 12-month lease. And so I think where you guys are trying to realign your offering really has a solid place in a really uncertain time. And so it's just as the government's saying tenants should talk to their landlords and that sort of thing, you guys are really in the middle there and willing to, you may not get that original rental rate that you'll get during peak season of short-term stay, but likewise someone can find short-term accommodation with that sort of long-term mindset, because we don't know how long this is going to go for. But if it does break in 3 months or 4 months, then they're not tied in for a really super extended period of time.
Absolutely. So I've read a lot about short-term stays such as Airbnb properties and seen other agents trying to encourage short-stay operators to switch to a long-term rental model, a more traditional rental model, in light of the short-term market just collapsing overnight. What I think is, we don't know what's going to happen over the next 3 to 6 months. And I think if owners are delving into a long-term lease right now, what they stand to lose out on is the bounce back of the short-term market once COVID's defeated and once travel's back on. Everyone's going to be completing their business trips. They're going to be taking their holidays. They're going to be ready to get out of the house. And I think if someone's switching to a long-term rental model right now, they're going to lose the ability to reap that benefit as an owner. So what we're doing for our owners is obviously allowing them to be well positioned to be ready when we have the bounce back, but we're also offering a medium-term solution to find people looking for accommodation right now that need it, that want it, and bring it to them at a great market rate.
So obviously you guys aren't the only ones trying to do this pivot to fill this void that's been created. We see Airbnb hosts and other short-term options trying to undertake a similar strategy with longer-term accommodation. I think I saw a statistic that from one of the major rental listing websites that listings are actually up 250% for this month. And so obviously it does create a bit of an influx. And so how do you think what you guys are offering can fit in that market where obviously housing stock has gone up or available rentals has gone up considerably in a short space of time? Obviously you aren't charging your short-term rates, but have you looked at the market and where those options are coming in to see how your pricing will compare?
So the strategy we've taken so far is we've done a standard market analysis, compared with current rental listings. So we're able to price competitively from the start. And obviously all listings and activity and metrics are getting reviewed weekly. We're communicating with owners where we're dropping rates where we need to meet the market demand. Obviously there is some demand there, a lot of stock, and we just need to be priced appropriately to be finding these people.
So historically, what have you found your best advertising platforms for Milson service departments? What's worked the best for you?
Look, we have a lot of existing corporate relationships, and we have something called the GDS, which is all corporate travel bookings, and it's an online real-time platform, and we participate in a number of programs as part of that. Also, we have a lot of relocation agents that come to us to book apartments for their clients that they're relocating internationally or interstate for work. We've also relied on Booking.com, Expedia. A lot of people book that for their travel. We're seeing a lot more corporate bookings through these platforms as well. You know, people have internal travel policies, and they need to book via a certain travel for their own internal compliance. What we're seeing now is obviously these channels are all dried up. You know, there's no corporate travel, there's no Booking.com, there's no Expedia. All we're seeing is cancellation after cancellation and dealing with the admin that goes with that. So now what we've done is we've started on realestate.com and putting some of these properties up for 3-month leases, trying to find the target market. We have seen a good response so far. I'd like to see something a bit stronger, but I'm aware that's the market right now. And we've also seen people coming looking for 12-month unfurnished leases on these properties, and sort of, we're not necessarily finding the right people. And what we're trying to do is find these people up to the 3-month mark as well. We're still finding some of these people, but I think we're not quite on the mark yet with realestate.com.
I think it is an interesting midpoint between the corporate sector and the private sector that you're sort of looking for.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of, if we think about people like corporate executives who may be in a particular location for a short amount of time, or at least are here for the duration of the pandemic, then they're a unique target market because the host company may not have a particular travel policy or may not be used to doing that, or maybe those mechanisms have been put on hold, as you say, but they may be a private traveller who's even here for work or here for personal reasons, or they need an alternative to their regular accommodation. And so the trick is, how do we target those people?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's why a campaign that fills both of those needs in terms of the potential travel for later and also trying to target specific displaced workers effectively who aren't in their normal scenario, I think they're the people that are going to be able to utilise what you are offering. And whether it's personally funded or part company funded or whatever that scenario may be, obviously your offering is competitive market-wise anyway. So it's really just about connecting those two endpoints together.
Mm-hmm.
So is there an opportunity, do you think, to maybe try and connect with those professionals who are displaced for a very unique reason, but for the duration of the pandemic will need to solve that problem?
Absolutely. So one unique instance we had last week was there was a gentleman that approached us. His daughter was coming back from overseas, had to self-isolate. This was before the mandatory hotel isolation policy came into effect. Instead of her isolating off-site, he's a busy CEO. He needed his own space to work. He's still working through this, obviously quite busy. So his option was to come to us, stay with us for 2 weeks, let his daughter self-isolate at home, which protected both of them, protected everyone else, and it seems to have worked quite well for him.
So there's definitely some opportunities there, and I think one route that we might be able to start with is, obviously we can update the website to handle these short-term listings. We might create a few really snappy video ads, maybe even featuring yourself to demonstrate. I mean, I've seen these apartments and the views are stunning of Sydney Harbour from most of the building, and obviously the parts of the building that don't have, say, Harbour Bridge views, they're going to attract a more competitive rate anyway.
Yep.
So people can sort of make those selections as appropriate to their circumstance. But I think there's some really powerful messaging that we can get out there to help connect these people. And the interesting thing at the moment with targeting, I know you guys have run some Google AdWords with good success in the past, and domain and that sort of thing, but really they're spending time on news websites and social media. And social media traffic at the moment, it's the first time in history where Facebook has struggled to cater for the traffic demands that are placed on their network. And that's saying a lot. So what I think we should do is get a social campaign started to showcase not only what you guys are about, but also potentially thinking ahead past this original problem and getting people thinking about their future travel plans. Because the irony of it is that if you get people thinking about their travel plans and they happen to share what you're doing or expose their audience to what you guys are doing, then they may stumble into the correct audience as well. So I think what we can do is create a two-pronged strategy. One is directly focused on engaging these medium to long-term rentals that you've got, and the other is a little bit softer and more about future travel plans and trying to bring Milson serviced apartments to the forefront of, say, a domestic travel option for when these things do lift and people start to be able to move around again. And I think it will not only serve the immediate needs that you've got, but it will help spread the word about what you're doing right now and what you can offer right now in terms of, especially for medicos and displaced workers, but it will help set you up for when things do improve again, that you will be exactly where they want to come. And, you know, hopefully we're on the other side of COVID by New Year's Eve, and I'm sure you don't have any problems leasing out apartment space for New Year's Eve, but why not, you know, get that demand locked in sooner than later, or at least connect with these people, even for summer holidays. Even if this thing lasts 12 months, if you keep communicating with that audience, then it will be there for you when the restrictions lift and they can start to travel around again. So what are your thoughts on trying to hit both in parallel like that?
Yeah, so that sounds great. We've already engaged in one very small social media campaign last week. We haven't seen any results of it, but it has hit over 40,000 people already. So I'm aware of the power and potential it has. I think right now that was more geared towards people looking to get away, and to be honest, we released it before the restrictions came as heavy as they are today. So I think the people that we're hitting and even the people we targeted in this campaign, even if they want to travel, even if they love what they're seeing, they physically can't. So I think you're right. I think we'll have these people on board for once all the travel bans are lifted, and right then we might see results of what we're doing now. But I think the two-pronged approach is good, and I think there's a lot of potential there.
That's great. Because the interesting thing that we're seeing in the data right now as well is that as much as people are focused on COVID and want that information, there's also this approach where people are tired of hearing about it and they need some good news as well. So talking about, getting people to plan for when things are better and getting people to think about their future trips, I think is a powerful way to introduce some positivity to what they're doing right now and get those sort of creative juices flowing, and it'll help people get through this tougher time. And so if you're there alongside for the conversation, then it's a logical step for them to come and stay in one of your apartments. I think the interesting thing about social media right now and how we can engage the audience is not only addressing the short-term offering that you have, but people are also holed up in their homes looking for a little bit of positivity out of this whole thing as well. Yeah. So I think there's a case for working a little bit around future plans and thinking forward about when they can travel again, and turning Sydney into a local tourist destination, because it's likely going to happen much sooner than, say, interstate or international travel, I think makes a lot of sense. I think there's a huge opportunity here to really engage audience in a positive way around discussing and planning and thinking about what they'd like to do once they can mobilise and move around a little bit more.
Definitely.
So I think there's a huge opportunity here to engage your audience or engage social media in a really positive conversation around planning for future travel, and especially domestic travel and locally around their state, because people aren't necessarily going to be able to travel interstate or internationally, or maybe not have the desire to do so later on. And with Easter holidays coming up, the opportunity for travel for school holidays has basically evaporated, and people are stuck. They can't even go down to their local park to play. So while we need to cater for the current offer that you have and that immediate need that you have to generate some revenue and solve some housing solutions for the near term, we also want to focus on that long term for the recovery period and position you as well as you can be positioned for taking advantage of that domestic tourism. So how about we do something like that?
Sounds good to me.
All right, sounds like a good plan. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Rob.
If you liked what you saw in this video, leave us a comment below, because we'd love to hear what you think. And wherever you've found this online, like and subscribe.